Welcome to the first. You have a story. If you look back on your life, you've done things for the first time that no one in your family, in your town, in the country has done. This is Dr. Sandi. You have unknowingly paved the way for others without knowing it or even acknowledging it. This is where you tell your story so that those who come after you can walk in your footsteps to build their own firsts. Today, I'm excited. I'm excited because I am hosting Nell Merlino. Yes, that Nell Merlino of Take Your Daughters to Work Day. Imagine what an impact Nell has had on girls and women. That same Nell Merlino created microlending organization Count Me In for Women's Economic Independence. Count Me In then gave birth to another mega women's organization, Make Mine $1 Million Business, of which my company, Consultants to Go, in 2005, we were lucky enough to be selected by that company as an awardee. During the 2020 pandemic, Nell rejuvenated Count Me In Revival, and I'm proud to say I'm now one of the coaches for her women business owners. I can't wait today to hear how Nell started out being a Fulbright scholar, or if that allowed her to host Queen Raina. Queen Raina of Jordan was in her home, and I want to hear all about it. And I know you do too. Ladies and gentlemen, Nell Merlino. Welcome, Nell.
Hi, Sandy.
Today, I'm speaking to Nell Merlino. Nell is one of my favorite people because Nell was really responsible for me making my first $1 million. And I don't think she knows that. Do you know that?
I do, because I've heard you tell this story, and it means so much to me because you're such a great businesswoman, Sandy.
No, thank you. But without the advice you gave me, which was, it was so small, and I learned it in Count Me In. And I remember we were all struggling, wondering how we were going to make it to $1 million. And this was in October. And I can't remember who, could have been Libby, who we were all in a session together and we were talking about collections. And Libby said, I was telling them that people owed us money, so we weren't $1 million on the books. And Libby said, why don't you just collect your money? It's as simple as that. We went out and collected our money. And by December 31st, we were over the $1 million mark. It's so simple. Like, why didn't we think about asking people for our money? You know? And I've taken that with me forever. So thank you. Thank you for that.
You are so welcome. And that's so typical of Libby too, just to say, hey, just go get the money. Just go get the money.
Yeah. And I'm like, I know how to get money. Why haven't I done that?
Right.
So thank you very much.
You are so welcome.
Today is about you. And we're talking to Nell about some of the first things she's done, whether in her family or on her own. And now I want you to know that your impact is huge. The things you've done really impacted generations. I can see it. So let's talk about your first Take Our Daughters to Work Day. Tell me about how that came about.
It came about in a conversation with the leadership of the Ms. Foundation for Women, which is an organization that Gloria Steinem founded at the same time that she founded the magazine, Ms. Magazine. There was a Ms. Magazine and there was a Ms. Foundation, and they did philanthropy. And they had seen work that I did across New York City. It was an AIDS awareness campaign. We were 10 years into the epidemic, and we wanted to sort of renew people's commitment to fighting HIV and AIDS and being safe. And we did crazy things across the city. I mean, I organized the distribution of 100,000 condoms on the streets of New York at the morning rush hour. Like, when they give out political leaflets, we gave out condoms with a leaflet attached to it. It was so fabulous. I was on the street with the head of the gay men's health crisis and the head of the city council, New York City Council. We got CNN coverage. We were on the front page of every newspaper because nobody had done it before. Nobody had given out the condoms before. And me, coming from politics, I knew about standing out on the street giving out leaflets, at the morning rush hour. So we did the condoms, and they had seen that news coverage and wanted to know, because there was controversy at the time about whether there should be condoms available from the nurse in high school. So it was a big controversy. And we had to be careful not to give the condoms to high school students because we didn't want to offend anyone and, whatever. So they saw that, and they find out, if they call the gay men's health crisis and then who did this with you? And they found me. So I went to talk to them.
I volunteered for GMHC.
You did?
Yes.
Oh, I love GMHC. I did a great consulting gig for them before I did the condom distribution. Well, part of it was we did a memorial for everyone that had died of AIDS in the United States. At that point, it was 135,000 people. And we projected 135,000 stars on the ceiling of St. John the Divine. And the church was full of people. And the next day, we did the condom distribution. So it was a big awareness campaign. They wanted something similar. The Ms. Foundation wanted something similar. And I said, well, what would it be about? And they said they had this new research that said that girls' self-esteem dropped as they hit adolescence, dramatically dropped. And I had seen some evidence of it myself and was aware of it in myself, but didn't know it was a big thing. And apparently Carol Gilligan had done a lot of research about it. And I read the research, and I couldn't imagine calling all the reporters and producers that I knew, telling them this depressing tale and getting more than one story out of it. It wasn't a campaign. It was just sort of. So I went to my father's retirement dinner. My father was retiring from 40 years of public service. And I remember sitting there realizing how many of those people I had met as a child or as an adult, who I got to know, in some cases did work with, all kinds of things. And I went home that night from that dinner. I took the train from Trenton back to New York, and I sat down at my computer and wrote 5 pages called Take Our Daughters to Work Day. And it was changing not only how girls saw themselves, i.e. being in a workplace versus at school or on a playground, or, looking at celebrity or fashion magazines, which is what girls were doing. And also started to think about how would we change adults' perceptions of girls and employers and teachers. And really did think that if we changed where they physically were, that it would help them see themselves differently and help the world see themselves differently. And
now, up to that point, the only time my mom took me to work with her is if I was sick.
Yeah.
And she couldn't afford to take the day off. And she would take me to work with her. Or the second time is to sell my cookies or my other things. But before that, I don't go to work with my mom. I don't think girls or anyone really went to work with their parents, right?
One of the biggest concerns that was thrown up in my face immediately, because people always try and, get you to not do things. And they said, oh, the insurance at offices will never cover this. So I find an insurance expert, because I'm thinking, oh God, is this going to cost a lot of money? Do we have to get an insurance policy? And the guy looks at me, he says, no. Every building, every workplace is insured to protect who's ever in it. So if children are there for whatever reason, they're protected as well. I remember just going, woo!
Yes.
Yeah. So no, I have so many great stories. That was an extraordinary year, because I brought it to them in February of 1992, the idea, and we did it in April of 1993. So in 13 months, we went from nothing to the first year was a couple million people. The second year was over 25 million.
And I remember I was at American Express, and Lauren she was born in 89, so 99. It's like she was little.
Uh,
And it was a huge initiative to take your daughters to work. And we all came in with our daughters, babies, like it doesn't matter what age. And we did that every single year. We look
yeah,
forward to doing that. And they
yeah.
look forward to it because we created an entire event for them. And I remember that one of the last times we dressed them up like in a little suits. We dressed up the girls in little suits, and there were little mimics. They had their little briefcases, and they had,
Oh, how cute.
and it was so like empowering to them to
Oh,
do.
yes.
And they
Well,
just,
and also to be like mom, to be like mommy. I mean,
yeah,
oh,
and
yeah.
it became a part of our culture was to
Yeah,
take your daughters to work. How do you feel about that? To create such a national movement that still goes on today, even though they
I know.
added the boys, but
Yes. I had an experience last Thursday. I am on a webinar for the Women's Conference of Florida, and there's a young woman who's the moderator. She's from Colombia. She's working on her English, but she was great. And we had a wonderful conversation. At one point, she said what an honor it was to meet me. And I was, I'm like, yeah, it's very nice to meet you. And she said, no, you don't understand. I came from Colombia when I was 15 years old. One of the first things my father did was take me to work with him on Take Our Daughters to Work Day.
how did that make you feel?
It makes me want to cry with joy that here's a young woman who now has a business. She's going to join the Count Me In community. She has a business. She's in social media and digital marketing. So
Right.
the perfect business to be in now. And she had early exposure to work in America by going to work with her father on Take Our Daughters to Work Day. Sandy, it makes me smile. It makes me smile. It does. What it does more than anything is that it's why I believe in other women and other people so much, because that idea came out of my head and my experience as a girl with my parents. I saw what they did. My parents both loved their work. And I thought if we could communicate to girls that this is something exciting to do, because a lot of mothers tell their girls that they don't like going to work because they don't want the children to think that they're happy to be away from them, when in fact, a lot of us like our work. So
and there are a lot of single moms who have to go to work.
Exactly. So it makes me very happy. It makes me very happy, very proud. And it helps me know to continue to encourage people when they have ideas, because I had the experience of an idea that literally came out of my head, becoming something that changed millions of lives.
Yeah.
And I think if you have that kind of idea and vision, whether it's millions of lives, millions of dollars, whatever it is, that I'm one to want to encourage anyone to try it.
And then after you did that, how do you top that, right? How do you top doing a national thing like that? So what do? You form Count Me In. So tell me.
I did some other things before that. I for about, let's see, from 93 to 2000, I had an extraordinary time working with the YWCA on the National Week Without Violence. We did that across the country and then around the world. So I had some international experience then. I was also the communications director for the largest gathering of women ever held in the world, which was in Beijing, China. It was the UN Women's Conference. I was the communications director for that. So that's how I ended up in Senegal, because I went to Senegal before
yes,
the
I
main
saw
meeting.
that as one of your first.
It was such a cool trip. And I went representing the UN Conference for Women. I went to Senegal because they had regional meetings, and the regional meeting for Africa and the Middle East was in Senegal. So, but I started Count Me In because I went to China. I went to the meeting, and in every session, after the session, women would run out before the rest of us got out, throw down these beautiful pieces of cloth and put all the stuff from their community for sale, because they were literally paying for their plane tickets. So they'd have all this stuff out, and many of them were financed by micro loans.
Mm-hmm.
So I got very curious about them, and I came back and I wondered, why wasn't this available in the United States? And come to find out, there were theories about how this works and how it should work. And I thought we should try it in the United States. So started working with a wonderful woman named Kathy Keeley, who was familiar with microenterprise, and she had met Muhammad Yunus, the sort of godfather of microenterprise in Bangladesh. And we developed an American version of microenterprise at the same time that the internet was really starting to go beyond email and things, and start to where you could make transactions. You could sell plane tickets, you could do banking very early on. So we thought, why not? Let's make these microloans available across the country, as opposed to being in a community where they had an office. Why can't we make these across the country, and we can determine whether they're loan worthy online? Well, people thought we were out of our minds, and the company that stepped up, which is one of the things that I think connects us, was American Express. American Express thought that it might work, and we set up the first online microloan fund in the world. No one had done it yet. And
what year was that? What year?
That was 2001, 2002, 2001, I think, 2001. There were plenty of organizations making microloans, but you had to go there. You had to physically go there, or somebody from the village had to come visit you. There was so we added this whole other element to it. And what I am proudest of about that is Kiva, this wonderful organization, based their loan process and program on what we did at Count Me In. And they continued to do extraordinary work. I think what I am, Sandy, is I really am a starter.
Yes.
I'm a starter, because we stuck with the micro lending until about, I want to say 2006, 2007, because we then had an even deeper relationship with American Express, and we had started Make Mine $1 Million business, which was really encouraging women who had micro businesses to grow to the million and beyond, like you did.
Yes.
So we shifted to a different focus from the microloans to the what's called in the language the missing middle of the sort of women's business world, which is what happens to people who start, and why are so many of them getting stuck? And I was very interested in figuring out how you get people unstuck. And that's why Count Me In created the Make Mine $1 Million business program.
Now, do you think you could have just started another arm and continued with the microlending as well as doing the Make Mine $1 Million? Would that have been complementary?
It could have been, but at the time, this is before the 2008 crash, most people who wanted to start a business could do it on their credit cards. You could, many people. You know them. I knew people who started businesses on 10 credit cards.
Exactly.
And didn't mess up. I mean, they just were able to borrow enough, float enough to get it going. And thought that because no one else was focused on the Make Mine on this $1 million part, or they weren't focused on it in the way that we were. So in that way, because the challenge always in the work that I've done is both a combination of how much energy you have and how much money can you raise. I think, we've talked about this many times.
Yes.
And it was very clear that we could get money and attention for the Make Mine $1 Million. It was harder to get it for the general population for the microloans. People were happy to put money into microloans for people who lived other places.
Interesting.
It was seen as a foreign or an international kind of emphasis as opposed to an American one.
Way.
Yes.
I think we just feel when we give it to other countries that they need more help than we do, and that's charity. But to give it to home, It's not as much charities, just like
that was a constant rub trying to do it here because it had become from Bangladesh, the original concept, and also all the things in the Caribbean, across many different African countries where communities would collect pots of money and then share it.
right.
And somehow there was just this thought that American women didn't need it. So that was such a challenge that we found more of a sweet spot focusing on the women who'd already been able to get a hold in a business and were making 50, 100, 200,000 who
Right.
wanted to get bigger. This is not what I thought, but I think more people thought that was more American, you know?
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, those are two big things, right? That you've done in your lifetime. And I was looking at one of your first, which was the Fulbright Scholarship. So let's talk about that and what kind of impact did that have on either you or the rest of the people in your family?
At that point, no one had studied abroad because it involved me moving to London for like a year and a half. And it was very exciting. I had done a junior year in London when I was in college, which I think is part of what gave me the idea. I very much liked my writing, and my speaking got much better living there because they use the English language in a beautiful way. Well, in a different way. Let's say different.
I was going to say, let's say different.
Let's say different. Let's say different in a different way, but particularly for writing. I was always astounded. Some of the professors and people that I interacted with there could speak in entire paragraphs without, without
the ums and ahs and
none. Just so I studied labor relations in the National Health Service. I had been a union organizer. Healthcare workers in the United States didn't get the right to organize into unions until 1974. I was literally with the first group. Healthcare workers at the time could not afford to get sick. They didn't have healthcare benefits. There's all kinds of stuff. And so I became an early organizer of healthcare workers. And it's one of these industries where there were all these men who ran the hospitals and the doctors. They were, gods. And then the rest of the business was populated with women.
A lot of the nurses.
Yes.
The people in the food services.
Almost all women, and mostly women, and depending on the community, women of color. So it was color, and they were making next to nothing and working difficult hours. I mean, all kinds of things, and all the emotional stuff that we're learning now about healthcare workers and what they put up with, and all of that
crisis. Yes, and decimated. Yes.
Right, and couldn't feed their families. So I did that for a couple of years, and I was on picket lines, all kinds of stuff, and I think I was probably the first person in my family on a picket line, that's for sure. Just because, and went to jail. I should list that out, but I was the first person in my family to go to jail too. But I forgot that one. I always remember being at a Kwanzaa celebration at Isisar's house, and we're going around the room, and she's doing that asking people who'd been to jail.
Oh, I remember that.
Yes, and I said I've been to jail. And I was in jail because of my union activity, but and the anti-Vietnam War. But I was curious because there was talk in the 70s, in the 1970s in the United States. Jimmy Carter had just been elected president. He was talking about creating a national health program, like what eventually Obama created. But Jimmy Carter is talking about it then. And I began to wonder what would happen to healthcare workers. Could we change the conditions of healthcare workers faster if there was a national health service? So I write a Fulbright application, never thinking I would get it, about wanting to understand how workers and women are treated in the National Health Service in England to see if we could learn stuff from that. And lo and behold, I get the thing, I go over there and find out that there is a hospital that is set up just for women, who is defying all the odds and all the challenges and changing how the women are relating to the leadership because all their patients are women. It was fascinating. So I wrote a lot about that. I had an extraordinary romance while I was there and read like 100 books.
Why not?
Just a lovely guy. And again, I mean, I read, that you had time, that somebody pays you because you got a stipend. It was a beautiful scholarship. I did work at the London School of Economics. I would go to Oxford University. I had an advisor at Oxford. It was an extraordinary time. And again, it's part of what I like about what's happening to me now. I actually have the time to read the things I want to read. I'm not racing through things or listening. And so I had, my first article published then. It was beautiful. And I came back to work in New Jersey with the Public Employees Union that represented all the healthcare workers for the state of New Jersey. Did some very creative stuff with them. Yes.
Nice. I had no idea what a Fulbright Scholarship was when I was going to school or even in college. It wasn't until later we were talking about when I was working with the Board of Ed, and I used to do some grant writing. My official title was administrative assistant, but I really was doing grant writing for this program. And someone was talking, about education, and they said, Sandi, why didn't you apply? I don't even remember what the topic was. Why didn't you apply for a Fulbright about whatever it was that I was doing? And I said, what's that? And they started telling me, oh, you get this scholarship. It's a great honor to get it. But I don't think a lot of African Americans knew what a Fulbright Scholarship was, quite frankly.
I don't. I mean, I'm thinking of the class of people that I started with. And I think there might have been one African American scholar in the group who was in a particular program of study that connected him to a university, and they told him that to get to the university to go get one, to pay for his trip and everything else.
Our counselors did not advise us, did not say, these are the things available to you that you could do. And so that wasn't even a thought in my head to go apply for those kind of scholarships. You heard about the smaller scholarships, $1,000 and a couple to get you to college or to keep you there. But something as awesome as a Fulbright Scholarship, I never heard of until years later. And I'm like, wow, I didn't know that was available. So cool.
I knew about it because my father was in politics.
Yeah.
And he revered Senator Fulbright. Fulbright did some significant things. I think it was around foreign policy, but he was very big into foreign policy, but I also think around civil rights. Okay. He did a couple of things that I remember my father talking about him. And because I had already left college, most of the people that I went to Europe with and around the world with were in graduate school. I was the only one in my group that was what was called an at-large candidate because I was not connected to a university and I had already been out in the workforce. So that was also interesting because all the others were like working toward their PhDs and planned to be professors. I was already an activist and, a union organizer. I was certainly the only union organizer, God knows. Nice. But that was fascinating also. That was really cool. I met men who worked for the miners union. I'll never forget this guy. He started working when he was 12 and he never finished high school. And I met him at a special program that they were doing at a university for union activists. Just fascinating people, guys who worked on the docks for all their lives, who were now writing plays. I mean, it was, and there were a couple with very few women, very few. But it was cool.
Women always seem to be in the lesser group when it comes to those kind of things.
Yes.
And is it because we're not told about it, or we're just not, people don't think of us in that vein that we would want to do those kind of things to give us the opportunity? I'm not sure why.
Oh, I think it's straight up sexism, misogyny, racism, because think about it. There's the Rhodes Scholarship. Who was Cecil Rhodes? I mean, this was not a big humanitarian.
Yes.
So there's Fulbright was not, but at the time, there were very few women. I mean, there was one woman who lived in a house that I lived in when I was in London, who was studying ancient languages across India. She was an English woman. She was studying ancient languages. She was very plugged into a lot of programs because so few people were doing what she did.
Right.
You know, but I remember she was one of the few women I met who had been going back and forth to India on some kind of a British scholarship that sent her to do this work. I think higher education, I mean, when you read today about the tenure struggles that women have, I am not surprised. I'm serious. I know I only found out about the Fulbright thing because my father paid attention to what the senator did. And I remember at one point I was trying to figure out what to do next because my father mentioned it to me, and I'm trying to remember who else. There was someone else. But it wasn't from a university. It was just from, my own interest.
Do you mention that? Do you encourage young women now to get that since you've done that for yourself?
I will do it now that you reminded me. Sandy, when you live this long, you forget all this stuff you've done. It was fun even making the list of firsts because you forget.
Yes. Because that would be amazing to even start, sending that information out to colleges or just to encourage young girls. So many girls are doing things that are a little different off the beaten track right now, that getting a scholarship like that would be amazing.
It really was amazing. They gave you money to live. They paid for your plane tickets. They paid for all your books and supplies. I mean, it was just beautiful. It was
like the Oscars. You will forever be known as a Fulbright scholar.
It's true.
And that's great.
And it was also the beginning. It was the beginning of. I did not do very well in grammar school or high school. I'm dyslexic. I had a lot of challenges in learning. And it wasn't until I got to college that I really started to excel because I was so interested in the subject matter. I was also a good speaker. And getting a Fulbright for me was it was a recognition of my intelligence that I had not had before. I really hadn't. It was, my sister Claire did much better in school than I did. Was an excellent student, as is my younger sister, much better students. And getting that recognition.
I only know Claire. I didn't even know.
Yes, I have a younger sister who I had Palm Sunday lunch with. We had a lovely time. Lovely time. She's an arts expert. She's worked at Lincoln Center for years. She worked at the National, oh God, it just went right out of my head. But she's been around. She's very talented. They're both very talented. But I hadn't had any recognition of my my smarts. So it was nice. It was lovely.
Older sister, are you?
No, Claire's older.
Claire's older.
Yeah.
Interesting. So let's finish off with telling me about ringing the bell at the stock exchange, because I was there. How did that?
Sandy, that was one of these things that somebody called me up and said, "Do you want to do this?" And I was like, "I don't know." I didn't grow up, and I never worked on Wall Street, so I didn't have a sense of the importance of it until I got there. When we arrived there, remember, and there's all those lights and everything with Count Me In and our videos and all that stuff. I'm like, holy crap, this is like a big deal.
Go.
Yes. And we were in that fancy dining room where they served us tea and coffee. That was like, 200 years old? Oh my God. I remember at the time, it was me. There were 3 or 4 of us talking sort of off to the side. Oh, Leah Brown was there. It was Leah.
Yes,
Leah said, "Nell, She said, I'd never until this moment thought about taking my company public. And we all sort of stood there and like realizing that none of us had thought about it.
Got it. That's true.
And that here we are, that they're happy to see us, that they want us to ring the bell.
Yes.
And that maybe this is another opportunity for us.
Yes.
And I was thrilled to see the Bumble woman, you know, take her company public the other day or last month. I think what it tells me is that you never know where the spark of an idea or of a realization about yourself, that there's something that you want to do or that you could do, and that the importance, sort of taking it fully back to Take Our Daughters to Work Day, you have to see it. You have to have some spark of something, some relation to something, to be able to put yourself in the picture and say, oh, I can do that. And
but you were creating the spark. You, by ringing the bell, you created the spark in a lot of women that day.
Yes. And did not know that going there that day. Did not
know that though when we're creating the first of something? Do we even know that? Sometimes we're doing it for ourselves or we're doing it for our reasons and not knowing that this is the impact it's having not just on you, but generations to come.
You don't. You can't know. You know retrospectively, but you don't know at the time. You see this, you know, people ask you, you know, they ask me, you know, how does it make you feel? And all of those things, I'm so glad I did all of it. I'm very glad I did all of it. But at the time, I had more of an awareness of the stock exchange of the significance because of the significance of the place.
Right.
And I hadn't been there before. So there was some combination of the history and the technology that was so current.
Before for a bell ringing, because I worked right down the block at Amex. We had gone there, but for a meeting or for other things, but I'd never gone for a bell ringing. Yours was the first time. I think I went there 2 other times, with Ink magazine and a couple of other people, but that was the first time that I'd gone to ringing the bell. And I thank you for that because it was awesome. And my picture was right up front. So
yes, it was so, I love that picture. I love that picture. I love the realization that we were all having, being there and starting to be able to think of ourselves, whether it's in this generation or the next.
Yes.
That we also belong there.
Yes.
That we belong there.
And the men were so excited to see us because that had not, that had not happened. And they were just so excited to see an all-woman group. There were other women, I think, but not as an all-woman group.
They confirmed for me. They kept telling me, the women who were ushering us around, they kept saying, you're the first all-women group we've had.
Wow.
You know, and you know that if it hadn't been women who were leading us around, we wouldn't have known that.
Correct. And I remember one woman said, she came up to one of the people who worked there that was leading us. I think she was leading us to the dining room. And she said, who are these women? Because we were just traipsing through. And she said, who are these women? Who are these women? And the woman said, they're all $1 million business owners. It was just like their little aside. And I was like, oh my God, this is an important moment, not just to us, but to the women who worked there and to see that.
Yep.
So that was so nice.
It was really fun.
Thank you for sharing all this. So Nell, what's next for you in terms of continuing your tradition of first in your family? And what do you want to do with the next generation to make it? Because, it's one thing to be the first, but to have other people come and be the second and the third and perpetuate that. What are the things that you have planned?
Well, I'm working on a book that's about the 3rd chapter of my life, but I hope it will be a map for other women about the 3rd chapter of their lives, because it's you bring forward some of the things that you've done as well as doing some new things. I love Count Me in Revival. I love working with women, continuing to work with them through Zoom and whatever way we're going to be working together to help women pivot and grow and build on what we've done, Sandi. To build on what we've done so that, you know, it may not be as hard for them as it was for you and I, because I've loved every minute of it. But we were talking last night. I have worked very hard, and I know you continue to work very hard. I don't work as hard these days. And I'm also doing artwork. I am creating these extraordinary images of women using helmets and things that symbolize power, because I think we continue to not fully appreciate how powerful we are.
When you say creating, are you painting?
I'm painting and collage. I'm doing both. They're really, I've sold a couple. I'm having so much fun with it. I have my next sort of fantasy is a show where you can see all of them, because I think we still, how we're portrayed is still often not fully embracing the totality of who we are and what we can do. So I'm now doing that visually, which I'm having a great deal of fun with.
So what I'm seeing are so many women doing things now that is creating a clutter, like a clutter effect. So we have a lot of stuff we have to weed through, right, to find like the good pieces of gem or even the good business idea. And I know investing in women businesses is a big thing right now, both to be on the VC side of investing in business or just women trying to get funding for their small businesses. Do you ever see Count Me In Revival participating in that?
In the investment?
Yes.
See, how I've always operated is I don't like to duplicate things. And I think there are some very substantial groups and people who are making the investment. I think my sweet spot in this space, I like to get women ready to be able to go to investors, because there are so many hundreds of thousands of women who have businesses, and there are more than we know who could be and want to be bigger, who could go to an investor. I like, you know, I said at the beginning, I like doing first. I don't want to help somebody to go see a VC. I don't want to be the VC.
VC.
No. It's not been an interest that way. I'm not interested in that as much as I am of sending as many women as I can who are ready to talk to them. See, I think the challenge is that a lot of people aren't ready to talk to investors. They need to get ready to do that.
That is true.
And you, Count Me In Revival, I think there are other people who are very strategically helping women get ready to get financing.
Absolutely. I just was on a podcast. Jill Johnson has this group, Eiffel, but she's really helping women, speaking to VCs and
is she in Newark?
Yes.
Yes, I remember Jill. Yes. She's lovely.
So she just had a podcast dealing with all of that, angel investors, and giving the information that women need, because we don't even know what we need to go talk to them. Not even just prepare our businesses, but we don't even know what is the difference between a VC and an angel and all of those things. So she's doing the education side of that, which I thought is so great. And you're right. There are a lot of women who just don't know. We don't know what we don't know.
It's hard to do that. And she'd be an interesting person to invite to one of our sessions at Count Me In Revival.
Yes,
she'd be great.
I can do that.
Yes, let's do that. Yeah. Because I think you're absolutely right. People think, oh, I need money. No, you need to really focus on what you need it for, when you need it, all those things. So in that area, I mean, and my strongest desire is to help someone else run Count Me In Revival as it grows, because I'm ready to yes, I am.
And we have to know that, right? We have to know where we are at all times.
Yes.
So my last question is, Does your family see you in the light of having all these firsts, or are you just old Nell from the block to them? Do they understand the impact of the things that you've done?
Some of my family does. Some do, and some, I think it is, Nell from the block, because they've always known me. And I mean, I haven't changed that much.
Right.
Because of my success or my accomplishments. I think it's a mixture. I have family members who just, are thrilled with my success, and others who are like, oh, that's Nell, So it's a mixture. It's my parents were, thrilled with my success. And
nice.
they came to everything. They were extraordinarily supportive. And my sister Claire has been amazingly supportive, and has worked with me all these years. So
this is why I'm doing this podcast now, because I think we all have a story, and we don't tell it. We don't tell it ourselves because it's just our everyday normal. And to other people, a lot of people don't know our stories. They know you where you are now as Nell, leader of Count Me In, and that's, they probably don't even know your background or know how many things you've been the first in. And so I wanted to shine a light on that for what I call the everyday woman, right? This is the little person that when you're sitting, you're talking to them and they're going, oh, I did that. You're like, you did? Oh my God. Didn't know that.
That's what happened with this lovely woman, Anna Carolina, on the webinar last week. She was like, "Oh," as she's reading my introduction, she's like going, "I did that."
Yeah. So that I really want to create a space where we talk about how we're leading, and so that the people who come behind us can hop on board and said, okay, this woman took time to create this thing. Let's be the second generation of this, or the third generation, and maybe Count Me In will become something bigger than all of us in the future, because some other people jumped on board and took it to the next iteration.
Yes, I hope so.
Right? So thank you. So. Thank you, Nell. And we never got to Queen
Rania. Queen Rania. Oh, Queen Rania came to visit me in the early days of Count Me In because she was interested in micro enterprise.
Interesting. For the people in Jordan? Did that ever come to fruition for her?
They have some programs, yes. And then I went to Jordan years later, and she was not there, but I did go to the palace to speak to some of her advisors. It was really fun. But she's an extraordinary woman. It was an honor to meet her.
I was on a podcast with IWEC, Nancy Plager, if you know Nancy, had her. She's one of the national ambassadors for IWEC. And so she really promotes the women businesses that are traveling worldwide. I've only seen her, but it's not like I've met her and spoken to her or anything like that.
Yeah, no, she sat at the dining room table. I still have.
You should make sure that dining room table has like a little plaque that says,
yes, Queen Rania sat here. Yes.
Thank you so much,
Sandi. This was fun. Thank you.
Yes, no, I really wanted to do this, and I appreciate you coming on to talk to me today.
I love talking to you, Sandi. Anytime.
This is Dr. Sandi. Thank you so much for sharing your journey on the first, where no two stories are alike, even if the circumstances are similar. Let this discussion serve as inspiration for others to show what's possible, and more importantly, to produce seconds and thirds.